From the gridiron to the diamond, this is more than X's and O's. This is your best Florida sports podcast with CBS 12 News sports director John Evenson, producer extraordinaire Sam Sullivan, and Max Shepman with the lighter side of sports.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Best Florida Sports Podcast. Unfortunately, we are not starting with the Dolphins win music this week.
I mean, the podcast theme is really good.
It is.
You do love the podcast intro.
Katie Carey, isn't that her?
Yeah.
Throwback to week one.
Yeah, we got that switched around, but it was.
Look how beautiful the set is, though.
I do want to say Branson, our other executive producer, did a really nice job. We got Christmas lights. We got some Dolphins gear in here finally, so let's get it.
Let's be honest here, though. Did he do this for us, or did he do this for one? I can still feel his musk in the studio. One Urban Meyer, one of the greatest college coaches of all time.
Coach, yeah.
I was going to find a better word than head coach.
How do you feel somebody's musk?
Was that?
How do you feel
somebody's musk?
Once you smell it?
We have been. He was probably sitting in your chair right there. One of the.
I can confirm he was in that chair. Yep.
Yeah. So thankfully, he was doing his podcast. You know what it's called? The Triple Option.
Triple Option. Yes.
It's the great podcast of Sinclair, and it's available on Apple. Spotify,
everywhere you get your podcast.
Everywhere you get your podcast. It's a great one. Urban Meyer's on it. I mean, for crying out loud.
We have a lot of special guests this episode.
So I got to go one-on-one with him after. He was heading to the Breakers, but he gave me 5 minutes, so we'll have that later on.
You met him there for dinner afterwards?
I did not go to the Breakers. He went to the Breakers. I went to Taco Bell.
Okay.
But that's neither here
nor
there.
The salary differences. Amazing.
Yeah,
it's probably where I have that taste.
It's probably where the Dolphins went after this loss because they didn't get to have a celebratory dinner because that was a tough one to swallow.
I hate breaking down these losses, especially when we don't get to hear the song and everything. But I think it's pretty clear. I mean, who do you blame? Like, what are some of the main? I mean, Tua Tagovailoa had his worst game of the season.
Agreed.
Clearly, right? Under 200 yards passing.
The crazy thing, he threw 40 times.
Yep.
Yeah.
40 times didn't get to 200 yards.
It's kind of a wasn't it fitting that all this money went into him, into Tyreek's extension, into Waddle, and when you think of the disasters that happened in this Texans game, all but eliminating them from the playoffs. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's still a little sliver of a chance, but Tua Tagovailoa twice trying to get the deep pass to Tyreek Hill, and both times intercepted. The final 2 minutes was the last one, right?
Yeah.
Just ending off. So, my gosh, and then Waddle gets hurt as well, but I think he came back, right? But I washed that game out of my mind. Waddle came back after that. Yeah, he came back after the injury.
He was for the majority of the time.
He got stepped on, man.
For the majority of the time, that second half, he was just standing on the sideline.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
When you saw when someone falls on someone's leg in at the end of a play there, which is what we saw with Waddle. I get so queasy for obvious reasons, but like when he like dragged himself to the sideline, and I thought, oh my gosh, like is this going to be? They weren't showing the replay, and I thought that's never a good sign.
Yeah, that's how you know it's bad when the Nashville feed's like, well, we're not going to show you this.
Luckily, it wasn't catastrophic, but the final score was.
Yeah, and then of course the other receiver, Grant Dubose. I mean, that was a very scary situation.
How do we not bring that up right off the top?
Has there been more of a bad luck vibe than the Dolphins have had this season? Obviously, with Tua with the concussion, now Grant.
The team that we're about to play this week, the 49ers, have had some pretty bad luck. We'll get into that later. But with this Dolphins team, it's been pretty shocking what they've gone through this year with losing Tua.
Yeah.
You get these crazy injuries. Yeah. It's been a whirlwind.
A lot of the, I guess, lack of a better word, apologists have been, pitting all the fact that they're falling short of expectations on that. Oh, there's been so many injuries. No one can help all this. But there's more to it than that. Dave Hyde agrees with me. I talked to him a little bit later on. But DeBose, as of Wednesday, on his way back on Wednesday to South Florida, thank goodness. Everyone was so worried about him. Tua, you could tell he was almost. I don't want to say in tears, but you could hear his voice, how upset he was as he was talking about how he felt guilty putting him in that position and throwing it up the middle. It's a fast game, right? But Tua, if anyone can relate, he was on the field for 11 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
They had to rip his uniform off, like give him
I've never seen that
oxygen.
before. Never seen that before.
So scary. So scary. So, then they have to go out there and play a game after that. When the game was over, everyone's minds, they were on DeBose, but in the back of your head, when it comes on Monday, you find out he's okay. You feel sick to your stomach because you realize the season's probably over here as well.
Yeah. Well, well, you kind of brought it up. Like, who's to blame? Sure, Tua had his worst game of the year, no question. But I put a lot on the Dolphins playmakers. Tyreek not really a factor on I believe it was Tua's third interception, driving down, or second interception. Dolphins driving down. Derek Stingley, I believe, takes it right from Tyreek's hands. Like, you got to show some fight.
Does not look like Cheetah, man.
No. And then, Achane, the running game hasn't been going well. I believe Achane had 7 catches for only 35 yards. So, obviously, when it's tough when the quarterback isn't, playing his best ball. But, again, in the fact of, like, the Tyreek interception ball, like, dude, you got to fight for that ball. What are you doing?
What happened to the running game, man? I mean, it's almost like that 2 years ago, even last year, like the most fun team in football. Everyone's so fast. We should know it's like a track race. It was all the national media talking about it too, and it's really showing now. The teams are, there's just not enough muscle. There's not enough
flair.
Yeah,
because remember we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's like, okay, like, sure, this dink and dunk offense is helping Tua out, but as you see against teams like Houston and playoff caliber teams, like, this ain't gonna cut it.
Yeah.
And all anyone ever had to do was the teams are realizing, like, let's just take care of Tyreek and a little bit more Waddle and
play a little too deep action. Yeah.
More than likely, we'll be in the position to win at the end, and that's what's happened.
I mean, I know they're trying to get Malik Washington more involved, but the fact that he's your leading receiver in this game, that tells the whole story right there.
Wait, did we sign OBJ I thought we signed.
Yeah, we sent him. We sent him out to the trash because that's where he belongs.
Oh,
goodbye.
Oh yeah,
goodbye.
That's right. I did see that.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
I gave him coal for Christmas, so check your tree, dude.
Max, I will be posting Max's address at the end of the show.
Wait, is that the Ring doorbell? No, I'm just
right. So you talked about the slim playoff chance.
6%. Is what the New York Times says.
I've got scenarios.
All right. We love good scenarios.
Love good scenarios. Can make the playoffs.
See, there was one publication that said 12%, and another one that said 6%. The New York Times said 6%.
What did Steve Karnacki on NBC say?
Oh, I don't know. But there's different formulas and whatever. But why are we in this position to begin with?
Anyway, scenarios.
Give us the dumb scenarios.
So here's two things.
I don't know why I went too far.
Here's two things that would have to be a guarantee for this first scenario to work out.
Yeah.
Dolphins would need to win out, and the Colts and the Chargers would need to lose out.
Colts and the Chargers.
Yes. Chargers are 8-6. So they would need to lose out.
Go bet all 9 of those games right now.
And the Colts,
as a parlay.
The Colts have the same record as the Dolphins, so they would need to lose out.
I feel more confident in the Colts losing out than the Chargers.
Or if the Chargers win one game, and the Dolphins win out, they'll have the same record at 9-8. The Dolphins would win the tiebreaker because of their conference record. It would be 7-5 compared to the Chargers 6-6. If the Dolphins win 2 out of their 3, the Colts must lose against the Jags or the Titans to win the tiebreaker. That would tie their in-season record. But those wins for the Dolphins would have to be against the Browns or the Jets. They would, if they would only win 2 of their 3, their only loss could come this week.
Yeah.
So here you go. The Colts schedule, right? Not great for Dolphins fans. They play hold on, sorry about that. Internet problems. We love that for everybody. So, yes, they play the Titans, they play the Giants, and then they play the Jags.
Yeah.
The Chargers, Broncos, Patriots, Raiders.
Broncos a tough one. That's this Thursday night.
And then the Dolphins play again. Teams they should be able. They should quote be able
because
to beat.
we talked about it.
Yeah.
Houston theoretically could have been the toughest test on the schedule going forward.
Well, I mean, these final 3 games, it's so funny though. Even if you don't make the playoffs, the Dolphins are trending heavily towards not making the playoffs. And isn't it funny that this is the one league where there's a huge difference just optically between being 6-11 and 9-8? If they finish the season 9-8 and don't make the playoffs, are you feeling better about the team than if they finish 6-11?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially from
but why is that? I mean, it's the same results. You know
from
what
a
I mean?
fan perspective, though, it's those 3 wins really got us. Yeah.
The only league.
We're 2 pieces away from getting to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I think from a fan perspective, obviously, I think those 3 wins make a big difference. But I think for the diehard football fans, you look at it and you realize the story of the team.
Do you think they still play Tua and stuff? If they're eliminated, are they going to risk? I think Tua's going to insist on it.
I think they play him. I think the big question is whether or not they bring in Bradley Chubb if they have no chance of making the playoffs.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
With a guy like that, you got to put him.
Just
put him to bed for the season.
Put him up in the attic with the Christmas tree for and then see you next year.
Obviously with the slim chance of playoffs, I think for guys on the roster, you're playing for your job next year.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there could be some major shakeups in this roster next year. And, if you're not playing your best, even though you're out of playoff contention and, Chris Greer sees that or Mike McDaniel see that, you're you could not be on this roster next year. So
there better be some major shakeups with this roster. Who's going to be the GM? That's the question.
Sam Sullivan.
Yeah. Dave Hyde, he has an opinion. He always has a strong opinion. He's been covering this team for years. So Dave Hyde, Sun Sentinel columnist, will shed some light with me on his take on what's going on with Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, etc.
We are joined now by longtime Sun Sentinel columnist Dave Hyde. I emphasize long time because it's been a long time since the Dolphins have won a playoff game, 24 years.
You can just say old, John. You can just say old. You don't have to say long time.
Hey,
okay.
a seasoned veteran, Dave Hyde. And 24 years now. It seems like it's going to continue. Frustrating team. And I know we talked earlier in the season when Tua was hurt about how poorly constructed this team was. They didn't have a proper backup quarterback, for crying out loud. I can kind of imagine what your take is now on why this team is in the position that they're in again and falling way short of expectations.
Yeah, to me, for the past 24 years, it starts with team architecture. Who they drafted, who they signing. Right now, let's face it. And I wrote a column in the Sun Sentinel today. Questions for Steve Ross. One of them is, how is your biggest contract your biggest question? And Tua, I mean, who is he still? Now, Mike McDaniel has shown who he is, but is that a top line or even a quarterback who can win you big games, or does he, and so we shouldn't be here, and yet here we are again, and different regime, same questions.
And the other 2 players they backed up the Brinks truck for in the offseason, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they've been the puzzle pieces all year that we've been trying to figure out why they can incorporate them into the offense better. I mean, that even furthers the notion of what the heck is going on here with this roster.
Yeah, they got a dink and dunk offense, and they got to come to some resolution. If they can't use these 2 speedy receivers who they're spending about $60 million on combined, why have them? Why use them as decoys? I mean, it doesn't really benefit anybody. And so that'll be another of the offseason questions. And they have this dink and dunk offense and can't get the ball deep, really. And so, there's an offseason question.
I've heard a lot of Dolphins apologists, for lack of a better word, say this week, well, there's so many injuries that you can't anticipate injuries, but that's what you're supposed to do as a GM, right? Anticipate anything could happen and be deep enough to still be successful.
Well, as Bill Parcells says, there's always an excuse there if you want to take it, and if you have a bet, there's always an excuse. But let's be honest, the injury that sunk the season wasn't a surprise. Tua has a concussion issue, problems out there. And that's, first of all, the backup quarterback's the second most guy on any roster in the NFL because of the importance of the position. Second of all, you had to be concerned who would get hurt, and to base the whole season on Skylar Thompson, and then you have to go out and get Tyler Huntley, and that's just bad front office work right there.
Do you see any continuing pattern with Chris Greer's failures here? He's had a few years at this. I mean, it's a big enough, I think, sample. Yeah, there you go. Six years, big enough sample size to analyze this guy and figure out what's gone wrong.
Well, I mean, his drafts aren't good enough. Roster construction isn't good enough. Really, again, you are what your record says you are, right? And that's who the Dolphins have been for the past X number of years. They tanked. When they tanked, they put everything was heaped on Chris Greer's shoulders, the personnel department. They had to make great decisions. He was either going in the Hall of Fame, probably because he was going to construct a sustained contender, or he's going to probably go out on a shield here this winter.
So in your opinion, is it time to start building up with drafts and stuff like that? Is there any way we can go into next season, thinking that we could work off what we've got here? Maybe they're forced into doing that because of all the big contracts. And to further this question, I know Mike McDaniel doesn't like 3-part questions, but I'll throw one at you. Is Greer still the man for the job?
Well, to me, it's time for a cultural reset, and 6 years is ample time to put together a winner if you're going to do it. What's going to change in the 7th year? Okay. And so if I'm Steve Ross, the question isn't to me, is it time to replace Greer? Who do you replace him with? That's the issue that Steve Ross has always had trouble getting right. And can he get it right this time?
So when you're shopping for a new GM, if that happens, do you have to find someone who is going to be, pro Tua, pro Mike McDaniel? Are those two still part of the future? Is one of them part of the future?
Well, that would come down to who you hire and then how much faith you have in that person. I mean, if you go out, let's face it, the big name out there is Mike Vrabel right now. Now, he was a coach, but he would bring in his whole staff. I'm sure he has it all set up right now. So that would mean more changes. And what does he think of Tua? I don't know. And how do you get out of Tua's contract, which they just signed a few months ago? So it's a labyrinth of decisions here, but it starts with getting the right people in charge, setting the right culture, and making the right personnel decisions that haven't been made in recent years.
So what do we do now with the final 3 games here, Dave? What are we looking at?
Well, you're looking teams to play hard for Mike McDaniel, and I have no doubt they will. I mean, everybody likes Mike McDaniel. But what does it mean? It's going to mean drafting 11th or drafting 19th, something like that. Their odds of making the playoffs right now are so small that it's not even worth. We're not even going to discuss those, are we, John?
It's 6% chance, and
6%,
as Jim Carrey
okay.
once said, telling me there's still a chance. So we'll put that GIF on social media for now and watch the 49ers game this Sunday and have a scotch.
There you go. Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thanks, Dave Hyde.
This is not scotch. This is
Allegedly.
pure coffee.
Totally.
You know who loves copying?
We should just do an ASMR podcast next week if the Dolphins are eliminated.
Oh, God. All right, well, here's a real thing that we should talk about, you know?
Yeah. Should Chris Greer get
Greer get fired?
What a sharp transition.
We're thinking a lot.
ASMR to you're fired. So, you know what? I think. See, Dave Hyde has his opinion. I know. I've been listening to another friend of the show is Chris Perkins. He's been very vocal this week of how he does not feel. I think I'm getting this right. He does not feel that there should be, a change in the brass, so to speak. And I kind of get his point. Like, think about it. Like, what was it, 4 months ago? I mean, Dave Hyde kind of touched on it there. What is it, 4 months ago? They signed Tua Tagovailoa to this massive contract, made a huge statement, making him the franchise quarterback officially. Tyreek Hill extended. Jalen Waddle. They've got these big, huge pieces here now, and a team that they're trying to build around, and with Chris Greer's fingerprints on it. What do you do? Like, do you just, how do you tear that all down? Like, how do you it's too late. It's almost like you put like a carousel horse in your living room and an outside of the ground pool in the backyard with like pimp that car with like terrible ideas. And then it's like, okay, someone else come in here and take it from here. It's like Chris Greer kind of set up the situation to where he's the only one who could finish it. You kind of have to give him one more year. If he doesn't see what's glaringly wrong with this team, maybe, then he definitely is not the guy for the job. I'd maybe give him one more year.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Obviously you just got to fix the glaring holes, right? Backup quarterback, you got to have an insurance policy in case Tua goes down. Like you said, this roster has the fingerprints of Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel on it. So for them to get one more full season of what their vision is of this team.
You brought up a good point, the Mike McDaniel aspect. Like,
right, because
he goes hand in hand with their trio.
Before Tua, this was even a bigger disaster. Mm-hmm. So I think you got to give them one more full year. Hopefully Tua stays healthy, but you still have to address that glaring need of backup quarterback because obviously look what happened.
His biggest offseason blunder, not even considering that the injury-prone Tua Tagovailoa might get injured, and then no one to four games down the drain or whatever it was.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go a different take from the two of you. I think that Chris Greer should get fired, and I think
I'm not saying he shouldn't. I'm saying he darn well should be fired for all but how do you do it? Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think it's in the best interest of the organization.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things too. Is like, but no, when you look out, who else are you going to get? Like,
that's very true.
What other big names are really out there that are looking for a
Jets are interviewing people, and it's not really your big names. But
so, what are your big reasons? I cut you off there with fire and a vengeance.
Well, I just think that
vengeance.
They're big games during the past 3 seasons. They haven't been able to beat playoff caliber teams, Super Bowl caliber teams, and that's you talk about him having the fingerprint on building this roster. That's on him. It's also on McDaniel, but it plays a part into the type of guys that he's picking and those personalities. On top of that, he just hasn't really been able to put it all together, regardless of Tua going down. So I think that Chris Greer will get fired, and I think that Mike McDaniel should be fired, but he definitely won't be.
So close to Christmas, so close to the holidays. You are
Happy holidays.
Look at this guy. Look at Sam's firing.
And you want to talk about another coach who had a pretty tough situation in the NFL when he joined a few years back was the man you spoke about, Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
But of course,
you feel his musk.
His college success was.
I'm now smelling Sam's cologne.
Yes,
he's driven.
I'm sponsored by YSL.
Out of the, was that Cool Water, man?
YSL myself.
Oh, nice.
Anyways, you got to talk to Urban.
He's of course, perfect timing. He was in here for his podcast.
Yep.
Do you remember what it's called?
The triple option. I don't think he ever ran that at Ohio State, but nonetheless.
That's right. But, man, I mean, who better to talk to about the college football playoffs? He talked a lot about – I asked him about Gainesville, and he was very open about how amazing it was, but how difficult it was for him as well, and the emotional turmoil he had to go through there. Penn State's backup quarterback, the transfer portal issues.
He's gone.
He talks about it all. So here, without further ado, you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from Urban, the man, Meyer. Well, we are here with one of the greatest college football head coaches of all time, Urban Meyer, right here. We love listening to you on a regular basis on the Triple Option podcast, especially during this time where we're all trying to navigate this new, college football landscape. Now that the bracket has been clear, the 12-team playoff bracket, what are some of your takeaways? Like, I take it as a head coach, maybe you'll regular season stuff like strength of schedule might not be a big thing moving forward because if you overreach in a non-conference game, it could burn you, right?
Yeah, I think overall it's a tremendous strength. The reality that all the best players are still playing. That all these teams had, up until a couple weeks ago, there was 25 teams that still had that hope that they could make it, and they were playing so hard. So overall, it's one of the greatest things that happened to college football. Like anything, they're going to have to make adjustments and fine-tune things and fine-tune it. and I made a comment either on Big Noon or on the triple option, was that one of my biggest concerns is why would you ever play anyone in non-conference? It's already, you have some teams in the playoff that never beat a ranked team.
Right.
And then you got SEC schools that play 6 ranked teams or 5 ranked teams, and reality is you're going to lose one of those, maybe 2 of those. And you saw, go ask LSU and A&M. LSU played at USC, or no, they played in Vegas, I believe.
Right.
And then you had A&M play Notre Dame.
Yeah.
If they didn't play them, they might have been in the playoffs. So I hope there's some kind of analytics or process they come up with to value the schedule. If not, you're going to see a bunch of 40 to 50 point spreads in the preseason, which, who wants to watch that?
Yeah, as a head coach, like, where's that line now to kind of, like, you want to get your team prepared?
No, there is no line.
Yeah.
Get to the playoff.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I wouldn't play them. I'd get to the playoff.
So do you build your team differently from the start in this different format, or is it the same game?
I think it's the same game, and I actually asked coaches about that. You don't, to foreshadow, you really can't. You're just trying to get first downs, manage injuries. I think because of the length of the season now, you probably lighten up your practices much earlier than the old 11-game, 12-game schedule, and then maybe, one bowl game.
Yeah.
So the reality is that you could be playing, several more games, so you got to be careful not to beat up your players.
Are there any big tweaks that you see right off the bat, like, the 4 conference, title-winning teams, the top teams making it through with the bye? Is that something that needs to be?
I like that.
Do you like that? Okay.
But I don't like the fact that you have Penn State and you have Texas, I believe, have the easier paths.
Yeah.
Where you have the conference winners that maybe have a more difficult path.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that one worked out, but they do get a bye week. So I don't.
But does that kind of push out some of the top teams? Like if there's a year where there's like just some power teams in there that aren't getting the bye and they're knocked out early, could that be something that runs into trouble down the line? If there's maybe even if it expands to 16.
Well, I don't see them expanding here. I think
You
it's
don't?
cleaning up to 12. For
That's it.
I mean, you just blew my mind with 16. so I think there'll be some adjustments, and I'm anxious to see. I think even a bigger issue, though, is this whole NIL thing.
Yeah.
You have one of the better players, Penn State's backup quarterback, Perbula. I think he's a hell of a player. They have packages for him each week, and more importantly, if Drew Allers sprains an ankle, God forbid if he does,
Yeah.
How do you sit? He's going to be sitting there watching that game somewhere. I can't imagine what would be going, because everything I hear about him, he's a Penn State, he's a Nittany Lion, he wants to be there, and he can't because that makes no sense. That does not compute. How that happened.
Now, before you go, I want to ask you about Coach Belichick, because I know you guys have, somewhat of a relationship. I think he's come to your practices, you've gone to his. How do you think his transformation is going to be to college football, to be a college football coach with all of the success that he's had in the NFL?
The one thing about it, he's a smart, he's a smart guy. And I mean, I went to his practices many times. He came to ours down at Florida, and Ohio State. I think the new model fits him. The old model, I don't know if it would have.
Yeah.
He would have figured it out because he's a smart guy.
You're talking about recruiting and all that stuff?
He's 72.
Yeah.
I'm not a math major, but in 3 years he'll be 75.
Yeah.
And but he's great shape. He'll figure it out. But anytime anyone ever asks, what do you think? The thing I come back at him is, what's the expectation? Is it win a national title in North Carolina? I don't know. They're certainly paying him like that. They put an NIL package together, from what I hear. But it's also a conference right now that's not the strongest. It's actually not a strong conference.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you had Louisville, you had Clemson. Clemson was the best team in the country. You had Florida State was a phenomenal team. Miami was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right now, it's a good time to be in the ACC for him.
I got to ask you about the Gators, though, just because, they had such a strong finish to their season. A lot of Gators fans around here.
Yep.
Do you see this team being able to rebound quickly next year and even be in the conversation for college football playoff?
I do. There's 2 reasons why. Number one, I have consistency of staff. I think he might make some changes, I heard. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know Coach Napier. Met him a couple of times, and the resilience that they were done.
Yeah.
They lost all momentum, and they somehow rallied it up and had a couple good, 2 really, Florida State, were down, but they had 2 really good wins, and they got the quarterback back. And they got a bunch of young talents. So once again, what's good? I remember what it used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be, I mean, we went 13-1 and people were pissed.
Yeah.
Now, so I do believe they'll rebound. How much they rebound, they're still in that SEC.
Is there a unique stress or pressure, or even just something unique and beautiful that you experienced in Gainesville that really hasn't happened anywhere else?
Yeah, it ate me alive. I was young and I wasn't used to it, and anything other than the national championship, I kind of lost it. It was really hard on myself, our staff, and our players, because I just put them. We beat. I remember we beat Tennessee or something by 14 points, and it was like we lost.
Yeah.
And we went 13-1, and we were going to Sugar Bowl. And I remember AD said, we can't sell our tickets to the Sugar Bowl. And I'm thinking, what in the hell, So, but that was all internal pressure, and I grew out of that a little bit. So, Florida kind of ate me up because we won 2 championships, and anything other than national championship, and I was, what happened? How do we miss that opportunity? So.
It's crazy. We'll enjoy watching the games. Did you watch by yourself, or did you need to just take it in by yourself? Do you have a whole group of people around you?
I don't try to overanalyze things. I just try to enjoy the moment.
Enjoy it. We enjoyed you. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. The most impressive thing about Urban Meyer is he did not seem rushed. He was very thoughtful. He spoke with me at length about those topics, and he was in a hurry. He was in a major hurry. He was heading off to the Breakers.
Busy man.
His podcast ran late, and he had 12 minutes to get to the Breakers. And I thought, oh boy, he's just gonna be mailing.
And John Evenson was like, "Do you know who I am?"
Yeah, that's what happened. So anyway, thank you to Urban Meyer. So what do you think about the? We haven't experienced. Maybe by the time you listen to it, a couple of the games will have happened. But what do you like? What don't you like?
I think the biggest thing that needs to be changed. They have the rule now where the top 4 highest ranked conference champions get automatic buys.
That bugs you? That irks you?
That does. I think that all conference champions should get an automatic bid. And I just think the top 4 teams, regardless of winning their championship, should get the bye.
Yeah, because if you're this conference,
you look at Boise State, you look at Arizona State, and you're thinking about Texas does not get a bye.
So Urban Meyer did not agree with you on that one.
He didn't.
No.
Penn State not getting a bye. Ohio State
he liked
getting a bye. He does like it.
He says I'm fine with that.
All right.
So you say that you're smarter than the one of the greatest college football head coaches.
We just have different takes. Max, what's yours?
I agree with Coach, and the fact of dude, we got to fix this portal system out so much, because the poor Penn State backup quarterback, who I believe he has 9 touchdowns this year with Penn State, and the fact that he has to choose to pick up and leave now when his team in the midst of maybe competing for a national championship.
You said a word there that was interesting, and just to be devil's advocate, he chose. He made it. There was a statement where he was like, I had no choice but to.
Well, kind of, because the portal window closes. Mm-hmm. And, by the time the next portal opens, I believe in April, that position that maybe he's going for right now is going to be gone. So, and especially, the Penn State starting quarterback is coming back next year. So, you really want to sit the bench.
It's not like there's tons of tape on him and stuff. He's got to take every opportunity.
Right. So my big thing is with Coach is the portal. I think and we see it in high school around here too. Is kids just pick up and leave wherever the hell they want.
These bowl games are a perfect example. The Boca Raton Bowl, which may or may not have already happened by the time you listen to this. 27 of the Western Kentucky players have entered the transfer portal.
Right, and Marshall, I believe, had to pull out because all their guys are in the portal as well.
So it's flawed big time. But also, the college football playoff has also kind of diminished these other bowl games anyway.
Oh yeah,
and also, and as Coach alluded to there. A lot of the regular season non-conference scheduling won't be as hardcore as it used to be, because teams just don't want to put themselves in a position to they want to test themselves, but they don't want to risk losing those games.
Right. So is it a strength of schedule, or is it the strength of ranking that you're trying to go for? There's a lot to figure out. I think college football has put themselves in a very tough position, because I don't really see a clear way of fixing this problem.
Should college football, Sam, be fired?
It should not be fired, but it will always be the baby brother to the NFL in my eyes. The NFL will always be far superior, and a much superior game than these college football playoff games is the one this Sunday against the 49ers.
It's Urban Meyer. No, it's Urban Meyer.
Yeah, great. Right.
I got Odell.
The far superior game is against the 49ers. That was a very weird one that they had this past Thursday against the Rams.
The Rams.
12-6 final, no touchdowns. The last time an NFL game had no touchdowns scored, you guys are going to love this. Week 18, 2022, Jets versus Dolphins.
The
Dolphins won
6-3.
The Dolphins won 11-6.
Okay.
They got a safety at the end to punch their way into the playoffs.
And you were making fun of me last week to say 28-25.
Well, yeah, I wanted to know how. So that might be the exact same way that the Dolphins get into the playoffs this
Clear
year.
what's going to happen this week. I hate to say it. The Dolphins are going to destroy the 49ers, and then when they go to the locker room, they'll find out that one of those other scenarios didn't go right, and they've been eliminated.
Well, you want to talk about another team that's injury riddled? I mean, they've lost Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
They lost their backup running back, Jordan Mason. They haven't had Trent Williams in the past 4 games. They got back Dre Greenlaw, who Mike McDaniel speaks highly of.
They're like the Lions of the West
Yes.
with all these injuries.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly what they're like. Yeah. So it's been a whirlwind for that team. So it's going to be very interesting.
So who are we looking at this week? Who's a problem? I can't do a game like Matt.
No, you can't do a game.
George
You gotta
Kittle
save
or
that for
Debo
later.
Samuel?
It would definitely be George Kittle. I think he's the most he's
playing my game.
He's the most consistent, reliable guy on that team. I mean, Debo's been so on and off, tweeting out, I just want the ball more, but he's never had more drops in a season. So
okay, before Max sets up his one-on-one, which is an awesome get. I love the fact that you called this guy up.
Awesome.
Did you call him on a rotary phone or did you text him?
No, I beeped him.
Brock Purdy has not passed for more than has not had more than 20 successful passes in the past 3 games. So he's coming in cold. Whoa, cold. But Max Shepman, he's coming in hot because he got a hot guest this week.
You know who could be a problem? Pat O'Donnell, the 49ers punter.
Oh.
Reached out to him. Obviously, it's a big homecoming for him, coming back to his hometown.
Yeah.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
watching the Dolphins.
Yes.
So I got to chat with him, signing with the Niners. We talk about his apparel brand with Super Bowl champion Nick Foles, dad's season.
Yep.
And I ended with a very specific question. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Listen to what he had
I
to
have
say.
my answer, but let's hear what he says.
All right, joining our program now, he really is a Palm Beach County legend. I think he was voted best-looking guy in Palm Beach County for 100 straight years. I also believe he's the only guy in Palm Beach County to have a perfect passer rating, where his job is to not throw the football. San Francisco 49ers punter Pat O'Donnell, welcome to the show, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So I want to get to a lot with you, but I have one important question to ask first.
Go ahead.
Have you gotten used to Pacific Coast time yet? Because your entire career, you've either been Central time or East Coast time.
Right now, yes, I'm adjusted. But it took about a week. I'm not going to lie to you. I was getting up 5 a.m., going to bed at 9 p.m. It was like a cycle, and I slowly got adapted to it. But the 49ers have a pretty cool setup here with a lot of recovery. I don't know if you're familiar with red light therapy. So they got these big things where you kind of go in these red light rooms, and we have this biohacker guru. His name is Elliot, and he said if you get in a cold tub for 2 minutes for a week and get in the red light, your body adjusts and gets in that circadian rhythm. So they got a lot of cool stuff in California, man. Very forward thinking.
Hey, man, anything to make sure you're comfortable, dude. You know what? We'll take it. We will take it.
Hey, I'm just trying to expose the people to some stuff that they might not know about.
Honestly, that's why we like to have you guys on the show, because you guys give us the best behind the scenes that nobody else can know. So it's always important to get your insight on the behind the scenes stuff.
The specialists are for the people. We're the common guy in the NFL.
That's what these shows are all about, is bringing the common people closer to the players that play this game.
Exactly.
So obviously you're in San Francisco, man. Been there about a month or so. Last year was kind of up and down, bouncing around, Atlanta's practice squad. What was it like when the 49ers gave you a call and said, hey, man, we need you out here in San Francisco?
Yeah, so like you said, the prior year kind of bounced around a little bit. unexpected. You know, you never know when that's going to happen in your career. But I was fortunate enough that the 49ers actually gave me a really good look. I worked out. They said they might have like a situation going on. Went back home, and then they called me basically a week later. They said, stay in shape. And I was down there training with Tony Bujaya, like who you're familiar with, and just trying to keep the dream alive, you know, just trying to prolong the career as long as I possibly can and keep going. And I was fortunate enough to land a great place in San Francisco.
Yeah, you kind of brought it up, man, because, you know, I've seen you training down here. Was there ever like kind of like a moment where it's like, okay, like maybe this might be the end of the road?
I mean, I think you always think like that. That's human nature to think like, is this the end? Like, you know, I didn't ever see myself as being like the guy that he bounced around on practice squads, and I was like, maybe it's time. But I actually had really great feedback from my agent and said like, no, they really think like you could still do this. And, you know, going into year 10, like you got to basically not make any mistakes when you're at those tryouts, because they're always looking for the younger guys, you know, 23-year-olds, not the 33-year-olds. So I was fortunate enough that they had a lot of faith in me, and I'm still here. So,
yeah, you're talking about training with Tony down there, man. Yeah, talk about, like, I know you just touched on it, but the mentality of, like, being able to be ready, because we all know injuries happen, situations happen. For you to just stay in that mindset of whenever a team calls, you're ready to roll.
Yeah, just being that street free agent, it's not for the faint of heart, man. You have to keep training, keep grinding. You really don't know when that phone is going to ring. We're one of 32. So they don't keep a guy normally on practice squad, you know, just in case something like this happens. So it's either that you really want it and you're going to be ready when they call, or you're not going to be ready. So the workouts are pretty cutthroat, and, you know, I've gotten used to them. I was unfamiliar with what those actually are like, but they make you kick a handful of balls. And if you look good, then they're going to sign you. If not, you know, it's like going to the driving range. You could be striping it one day, the next day, you never know. So you always want to catch it when you're on fire.
So it's a little bit of a different week for you. Obviously, it's kind of a homecoming for you. You know, it's not really new coming to play the Dolphins, but is it still a special feeling coming back home to come play in front of family, friends at, you know, one of the hometown teams that you grew up watching?
Absolutely. It's the stadium that I played college in. You know, I played for University of Miami, so obviously it has a special little sentiment in my heart with that. But like you said, anytime you can, you know, try to perform in front of the family and people that have supported you along the way, I think we're going to have like a little Pat O'Donnell section at the game. So it's really nice to have all the support that all the people that have been behind you for my whole career.
If I don't see any like "We love Pat O'Donnell" signs in the crowd, I'm going to be very upset, man.
I'll be upset if you don't have one.
Hey, honestly, I will make one for you, dude. Absolutely.
No, don't do that. I don't want any attention. Like,
what?
Man, you got a lot of fans here, man.
Come on, Pat. I know you want to be the normal guy, but like we got to represent the normal people out there.
I love it. Specialists are people too, man.
Hey, man, special teamers are people too, dude. Absolutely. Yeah. That's been the motto everywhere, right? So obviously, I know we talked about it a little bit, you know, the uncertainty going from the Falcons and stuff like that. You know, a lot of like football players kind of dig into different things like real estate, and you kind of dove into the apparel world. Dad season is what you and Nick Foles created. You got the hat on, repping it proudly. For the people that don't know, what is the story behind Dad season?
So the quick story is I got into this. It was first a charitable thing that I was doing, and we were trying to raise money. And then somebody actually said, you should make this into an apparel brand. I said, I didn't know the first thing about apparel. I might just leave that alone. And they said, no, you should think about it. So I kind of grinded it out, learned a lot of stuff through that year where I was bouncing around, just trying to keep my mind fresh, you know, something that wasn't on football. And I called my friend Nick Foles, who's a superstar in Philadelphia. And he said that he would love to join up, have a joint venture with me in this apparel business. So we created Dad Season, and it's essentially just to create a community of dads that don't really hide behind the grind of raising children. You know, like a lot of guys have 9 to 5s and they come home, and, you know, the weekends are just all about them putting in the time with the family that they miss out on. So we wanted to have a brand that represents the working dad. So that's what we did with Dad Season.
Yeah, you know, again, luckily to know you, I've met your family. You know, I think for you to watch them kind of grow up, obviously football players, it's tough because sometimes you're on the road and stuff like that. I think what's it been like for you to incorporate your own dad life into this company and watch other dads continue to, raise their kids?
Yeah, I think once you are an NFL dad, you do have a lot of time that is away from the family. And when I had that moment of that year where I was home, my kids loved it. They enjoyed every single minute of it. And then they didn't understand when I abruptly got ripped out going to San Francisco. So they were out here last week. We had a Sunday and then a Thursday game. So they stayed out the whole week and they got to watch 2 games, which was awesome. And my daughter's about to be 4 here in the next couple of days, and she's starting to understand it. So I think as long as I keep bribing her with the Paw Patrol dolls when I'm not home, she'll just let me finish out the season without any hiccups.
Hey, listen, hey, Christmas is here. Did she ask for a lot of Paw Patrol gear?
Yeah, she loves it. I don't know if anybody else's kids are obsessed with that show, but man, they do a number on the kids.
So it sounds like Dad Season and Paw Patrol for somehow need to come up with a collab.
Absolutely. If they're listening, yes, we would love to do a collaboration with you guys.
We'll try to put a letter into them for you, buddy. Again, when you look, obviously Nick and his family, part of it as well. I think for you guys, again, for the normal people that, go home, work the 9 to 5s, and Saturday, Sunday, it's all about athletics or dance or whatever. I think when you see parents embracing the things that their kids love, does that bring even more of a special feeling to what the brand represents?
Absolutely. I mean, I think just being present for your kids is what we're trying to hit home on. We as athletes, me and Nick kind of talked about it. He knows that he was gone for a majority of his kid's career, and him and his daughter had a special moment at the podium in the Super Bowl when he has Lily in his arms and he's hosting the Lombardi Trophy. But that was something that we really wanted to incorporate with this brand. So yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Obviously, it's tough to promote the brand when you're out kicking punts. Last week, we saw Nick on Barstool repping the Dad Season brand. For you guys to be able to just put it on massive platforms like that to get the brand out there, it's got to be pretty cool to know, like, when you can't do it, you got Nick Foles out there doing it too.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so great about our partnership is that he really was pushing me to keep playing and live out my dream. And he's down in Newport Beach, California, not too far away from me. And he's taken every call that he can. Barstool called and said, hey, do you want to come join the show? And obviously Barstool Philly was there hanging out with him. And all those guys are lunatics and they love Nick Foles. So he had a great time, and Barstool are great people, and they help pub us as much as, they could. So we're very fortunate with that.
All right, I kind of want to end on this. This is also a serious question. It's been debated for many years, right? Do you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
All right.
I mean, I would not put that in the Christmas genre right away. I mean, I'm more of like Christmas Vacation,
It's got to have like the season behind it, right?
I would think so, yes.
Because a lot of people are like, yo, it's a Christmas movie because it happens during Christmas. Like, granted, like it released in July, but the background behind it is Christmas.
Correct. Yeah. But, I mean, where do you stand with that? I mean,
honestly, like, I feel like that movie is such like a legendary movie that I can see that like it being a Christmas movie because, again, like, sure, there's some rough scenes in there, if you've seen the movie, a lot of potential unaliving is what we'll say, but it is set to the scene of Christmas and a family trying to get back together. So I can see how people can get the Christmas spirit out of it.
I do.
But you're the Rudolph type guy.
I think I'm just in that day and age right now with my kids. Like I don't think I could just pop that movie on and expect them to sit down and watch it. I'd be like, no, you guys need to go in a different room.
So we're waiting for your daughter to turn about 8 to put that on, is what you're saying.
Yeah, a couple more years. But that's a really good point. I'm going to bring that up in the locker room and see where guys stand on that.
Honestly, Pat, I think if you do that, I think we need to have a follow-up interview or like something to get the gauge of the guys on this because, again, this is like a highly debated topic for years from like everybody. So if we can get the 52-man locker room in on this, I think that brings a lot of validity to like each side.
Who gave you this information? Who said it was?
I'm making you the official Best Florida Sports Podcast correspondent for this.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get back to you on this.
All right.
The numbers might be alarming. I'm just warning you.
When I see you at the game on Sunday, I better have an official answer. Otherwise, I'm going to like just walk up to Fred Warner and be like, listen, did Pat do this?
I think Fred will shoot me straight. He really will.
He is a scary dude. He is a very scary dude.
Yeah, he's a scary dude. So I'm going to be like, hey, Fred, can you answer one question for me? No.
Honestly, like for this podcast, it'd be the best platform for him. Well, Pat, I appreciate the couple minutes, man. Obviously, you've had a hell of an NFL career. We can't wait to see you on Sunday for the homecoming for you, man. And, I appreciate you taking a couple minutes, dude.
I could not disagree with Pat more. Wow. Can I call him Pat? Are we on that first name basis?
Well, I'm sure.
His name is Pat, so yeah, go ahead.
Okay, any movie that takes place during the entire Christmas season and has Christmas backgrounds, Christmas trees, you could tell it's the Christmas season. It's snowing the whole time. Anything like that will get me in the mood, especially living in Florida where we don't get snow and stuff like that.
It really is a family movie if you think about it.
It is 100% a Christmas movie. I don't suggest watching it with the wee ones. But I'll sit there with, as I said to Dave Hyde earlier, a scotch and watch have a Die Hard viewing maybe around the 22nd of December while everyone else sleeps and really feel festive.
Wow.
In a weird way, in an explosive way.
Speaking of explosive, I think you have an explosive game for us.
I do. I kind of kept this one short this week. So I'm going to give you two. We all love Christmas characters, right? I'm giving you two Christmas characters. You got to tell me who on the Dolphins is this specific. Okay. It could be a player or it could be management, whatever.
All right.
So do you want to start with the good or you want to start with the bad?
Elf.
The bad.
Sam Sullivan.
All right, we'll start with the bad.
Did you hear?
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Who
Yeah.
is the Grinch of the Miami Dolphins this year?
Oh, who is the Grinch? Gosh, I gotta tell you, this is a tough one because you go into that locker room on Wednesday following losses and you expect somebody to be just crank or doodle do, but it's really
Crank or doodle do?
It's not really the case. But you know what I will say? I can give you the Grinch after losses. After losses, a guy who I can really tell, it doesn't matter if he's had a good game or a mediocre game or like whatever. You don't even think of him as the guy, but he is so hard on himself, I think, and it takes so much responsibility. A guy who is a little bit more cranky after losses, who I will name the Grinch, who's also a nice guy, is Javon Holland.
Wow.
Javon Holland, a little bit crankier than the others, and there's a little bit of an edge to him when you're asking him questions after a loss, even one again where I think he thinks of all the things that he could have done, and it really just irks him, and he kind of like, you could feel it, you can feel that energy. So Javon Holland.
I'm gonna have to go Chris Greer. Think he stole the Dolphins' playoff chances by not signing.
Oh, we're going by stealing things?
Yeah, he stole Christmas.
He stole Christmas.
By not signing a proper backup quarterback, by not formulating this team as good as it could be. Chris Greer.
Wow, all right. We're on the same page, so good. All right, we're going to go with the good, the one that gave the Dolphins the most hope this year.
Yeah. So he's got a big old sack, and he's taking
I was going to go
football.
Bright red nose. Bright red nose.
Oh,
Rudolph.
Who's the
Rudolph of the Miami Dolphins this year? Go ahead.
Calais Campbell is the Rudolph.
Wow.
He is, although I guess the plot line of Rudolph is at first no one likes him, and then he becomes like the hero.
Well, they were thinking about trading him, so maybe.
Yeah. But Calais Campbell is just the bright light in that locker room. No matter what, he's the go-to guy. He'll always give you a positive spin without being patronizing.
Patronizing. Here we go again.
Patronizing. I brought it up on purpose. But yeah, so he's my Rudolph. I could picture him having a big red nose and loving it.
All right. Somebody I'd have to go with who, when he came onto the scene, not really somebody you thought would have the impact that they do at this point. Of course, it's been a little bit down in these past month or so, but I have to go Devon Achane is the Rudolph of this team. I mean,
that's a good one.
He really is the bright light of this offense. Him and Jonnu Smith. I mean, what Achane's able to do for this team, both in the run game and the pass game, he just brightens my day.
Gosh,
I like that.
You kind of changed my Rudolph a little bit with that answer. I'm now leaning more towards Jonnu.
Oh,
Because I mean, he came in and he didn't do anything for the first few weeks, and all of a sudden
he's trying to save the Dolphin season.
Tua sees that red nose, soaring up the middle. There he is, another time. So I think maybe Jonnu is my Rudolph.
All right, I like that.
And Calais Campbell is just my Santa Claus.
All right,
yeah,
good to know. Good to know.
And then on the other side of the ball, the abominable snowmen, a.k.a. the San Francisco 49ers. I got to speak to Aaron Wilson.
There's no snow in San Francisco.
Yeah, but they find their way.
It's cold out there.
Global warming. I got to speak to Aaron Wilson, works for KRON out in San Francisco, covers the 49ers heavily.
Is Aaron Wilson a male or a female?
That would be a female. That is ERIN.
Okay.
Not AARON.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to set the scene.
Yes. So I spoke to her. We talked about, of course, that Devondre Campbell blow-up linebacker
that whole
decided
debacle.
not to play, the injury that they've been riddled with all season, and what this game's going to look like for both sides. Take a listen. You guys played the Rams last Thursday night. A very confusing game, I think is the best way to put it. No team scoring a touchdown, of course.
Yeah.
But the 49ers are very injury-riddled, just did not look like they can figure anything out. What were your takeaways from that game?
Well, I think the takeaways were kind of a culmination of what we've seen all season long. The offensive struggles, also the games they've had to play in weather have usually turned out this way. And I do think weather played a factor in productivity on the offensive side of the ball for Brock Purdy. And of course, for a few of the wide receivers, just trouble getting the ball downfield, trouble getting the ball on target. So that obviously hurt them. But then on the defensive side of the ball, they actually had some life that we hadn't necessarily seen as consistently as we saw in the first half against the LA Rams this season. Obviously, welcoming back linebacker Dre Greenlaw, who they've been missing all season long. And I do think that having him back just brought a different presence on the defensive side of the ball, that they were able to kind of remain dominant. Both defenses, though, were pretty dominant in the first half on the LA Rams side and the Niners side. And I do think that if the defense was able to kind of continue on with that, and then the offense was able to get something going in the second half, the game would have turned out differently. But like you said, neither team scoring a touchdown. I believe that was the first game this season of such a game. But then also on the other side of the ball with the defense is what happened with Devondre Campbell, which of course was huge news. And I'm sure we'll probably get into that in a minute. But just to kind of give an overall look at the game, I do think that the offensive struggles were kind of the Achilles heel of the loss against the LA Rams, where special teams pretty much took care of business. Defense took care of business as much as they could, but the offense just couldn't get it working.
Yeah, and you, of course, brought up Campbell, who, that was the big takeaway from that entire game, in deciding not to play after getting, demoted from being a starter. What was the buzz around the team after that happened? And, of course, press conferences with, Coach Kyle Shanahan and players.
So initially after the game, many of the players didn't really realize that it had happened. Some were actually playing when the encounter was going on the sidelines. There were different reports coming out. But then, of course, for us in the press conference room, when Kyle Shanahan revealed that the reason why he was leaving the field in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, whichever it was, because there have been conflicting reports on that, was because in the second quarter, he was asked to play because Dre Greenlaw was going to need to come out. And he decided that he did not want to play. Now, we did find out after the game that many of the players, like I said, didn't know it was going on. But some wish they had of, like George Kittle, because they wanted to keep as many distractions off of the side of the field that they could. And of course, that was somewhat of a distraction in a game that had such huge implications on how this season would turn out for the Niners. Now, that said, we were actually in the locker room with the guys on Monday, which was yesterday. And that is when we found out that Nick Bosa actually said he heard rumblings and mumblings from Devondre Campbell, some complaining in the locker room ahead of game time that gave him an inkling that something was going on, but he just didn't assume or foreshadow that Devondre would actually go out and do what he did, because none of us have really seen that happen before. A player just on a team, dress out, and refuse to play, almost as if they had planned on doing that. They were just waiting on the opportunity to say that they didn't want to play. And then, of course, some of the guys weighed in just saying, they didn't appreciate that. Obviously, the Niners have been riddled with injury, but they've been riddled with tragedy this season in so many different ways. One of the wide receivers, Ricky Pearsall, the rookie, almost losing his life at the beginning of the season, still coming back to play. Fred Warner, obviously a mainstay and a huge, cornerstone for the Niners defense, playing through a fractured ankle, which we found out weeks later that it was actually fractured. We knew that it was injured after, I believe it was the Cardinals matchup, but we didn't know that it was actually fractured. And him deciding to play on that obviously just shows his dedication to the team, to the defense, to this season, trying to turn things around. Obviously having to deal with not having Christian McCaffrey, their offensive player of the year. That was tough. But then to know that two of the Trent Williams on the offensive line and then Shavarius Ward on the defense, both lost children this year. All of these players deciding to battle back, Christian McCaffrey even, with the risk of having to play on bilateral Achilles tendonitis. It just showed the mentality of the Niners locker room in so many ways. And so to have a guy like Devondre Campbell, who's not been there, who's added on to the defense this season, played some pretty solid minutes out there, was able to kind of culminate a good stat sheet throughout the season in the 12 games that he started, for him to go and be disappointed when the obvious happened and Dre Greenlaw being healthy enough to play, and then him being benched behind that, but not even for the entirety of the game, just for the time that Dre Greenlaw was out there. It's tough to think that someone would actually plot and scheme to do something like this with a team that he spent the entire season with. That's just uncharacteristic of the Niners system, but then just odd when you think about the NFL altogether and knowing that he's a veteran. It's just so many complexities to that situation. But the guys, of course, in the locker room and on the coaching staff, not at all happy about that.
The game this week against the Miami Dolphins, another team coming off of a tough loss. They, had a close one against the Houston Texans. Both teams 6-8. They're looking to fight for a playoff spot. Very slim chance. Heading into this game, you're dealing with now a third string running back for your team, the 49ers. The Dolphins not really injury riddled, but you realize that they win or lose through quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. So what do you think it's going to take for this 49ers team, especially this defense, to be able to, shut him down and shut down that offense?
I honestly do think that the defense is probably where the Niners will excel this week. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa coming off of a tough performance, 3 interceptions, a fumble, and then obviously losing one of their players to an injury, a head injury in DeBose, where, of course, he probably will be out for some significant amount of time because of that, having to be hospitalized behind that. Then Jaden Waller being questionable with his knee injury, if he'll play against San Francisco. I do think the defense has an opportunity to really show how dominant they can be against a Dolphins team that is trying to hang on to their playoff hopes, as the Niners are trying to hope that everything goes right so that their playoff hopes stay alive, with the slim chance they do have to make it into the postseason at this point, needing to win out, of course, in the NFC West. So I do think that the defense actually, with Fred Warner back, Dre Greenlaw hopefully being able to go, because he had some soreness after having to play after being off for 10 months, of course. So that's predictable that he would have to rest a little bit and just get his body acclimated to being back out there in game time action after so much time and such a gruesome injury with a ruptured Achilles. I do think that the defense, you have Deommodore Lenoir, Shavarius Ward, they have weapons, Jair Brown, you have so many weapons on that defensive side of the ball that I do think that is where they could capitalize against the Dolphins. Now it's up to the Niners defense to do what they've been asking each other to do all season long, play some complementary football and make good on their side of the ball, score, get in the red zone, and actually get some production out of the red zone, get some touchdowns so that you can create some separation, as the defense, I think, will have an opportunity to have a pretty dominant performance against the Miami Dolphins team that is a little beat up and that is coming off of a tough loss this past week to the Texans.
I'm curious to know what your score prediction is for this game on Sunday.
I do think it'll be a close one. I do think that both teams will find the end zone in this one, honestly. So I'm going to go 24-21. I'm terrible at these. But I will say that, and I am going to lean on the side of the Niners because I do think that they are really excited for a couple reasons. I'll start with one. This team is not a team that's down and out. They're just a team that has had to deal with a lot of injuries and a lot of off-field things that have just kept them from, like I said earlier, finding some rhythm, some cohesion on a consistent basis. They've not been able to really stack wins. The only 2 wins they have in a row were split up by a bye week this season. But then on top of that, you have Brock Purdy, where this game is kind of special to him. Because if you remember back in 2022, this was his coming out party. This was when he got the nod after Jimmy Garoppolo went down. And of course, Trey Lance wasn't able to go. And Brock Purdy got in pretty dominant in that game. Of course, they ended up winning in that game against the Miami Dolphins. And coming off of such a tough week this past week against the LA Rams, I do believe that he feels he needs a little bit of a get back game, some redemption.
All right, so you heard it there. Aaron had it being a pretty close one, still feeling like the 49ers will win this. I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go, of course, the Dolphins winning, but it's going to be pretty low scoring. I'm going to go 17-10 Dolphins.
Yeah, I can just picture the scenario of them just having this really feel-good game offensively and defensively, especially with Brock Purdy playing the way he has lately. Something like, a 28-6 final or something like that for the Dolphins. Wow. And then they end up being eliminated anyway.
That's fair. I like your score. I'm going to go opposite result. I think Kyle Shanahan knows Mike McDaniel. Yes. I think he's going to be a little bit more creative on offense for the Niners this week. Hopefully we don't see too much of Pat O'Donnell. I love my guy, but, for the 49ers fans, they don't want to see him much. But I'm going to take San Francisco 17-10.
Ooh, wow. And you picked the Texans. You're on a roll. So hopefully.
If you need your sports gambling picks, I'm here for you guys.
All right. Hit him up.
Well, in the meantime, I want to appreciate you guys for tuning in to episode 15 of the Best Florida Sports Podcast.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
We'll have a quinceañera next week.
We hope you get to enjoy the holidays.
By the way, we didn't even mention we wore our podcast like last week. I was the only one. Now it's us two.
Yeah, so
next week we'll go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's make it happen. I did fix my washing machine, so I got this. I heard that his broke.
You fixed the washing machine yourself?
I did.
Wow. You a real handyman.
So I'm gonna go to his next week. Yeah.
Can you come fix mine?
No.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much.
Best Florida Sports Podcast drops every Thursday morning. Listen on your favorite platform or watch on YouTube.